Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Robin Grabfelder, and today Sue Hillyard and I are joined by Ryan Evans, Marie O'Neill, and Kim-Marie, and we're going to discuss the planetary alignments for the rest of 2024.
Yay. And we have a
So who would like
couple
to?
of people that may or may not join us. So we'll see what happens.
Sure. Hello. Which one of us is going to start?
Well, you're speaking.
Go ahead, Kim-Marie.
All right. Well, then I'm going to put my screen up. So give me just a second. Yes, they changed things. Okay, there it is.
I love the new workplace that Zoom has created.
Haven't used it yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. Trying to get this to go up so that I can get to share my screen or slideshow. It's not letting me get in there to my slideshow.
Well, you'll have to make it large first. Do your slideshow.
Now it did it. Now
Okay.
it did it. Oops. So I've got the two eclipse charts, Ryan and Marie, and this is from a previous talk I had done. So the eclipse chart for the South Node lunar eclipse is down here on your lower left. And Ryan, you were asking, here's the Munkacy chart that I started using a few years ago. I'll let that go for a moment. I can give you the link of his research if you are interested in it. As most of us astrologers know, we're heading into a South Node eclipse season. That means that the sun is on the moon's South Node. And so in general, South Node eclipse seasons are where we have to do those South Node reviews of the past. And I have a tendency to say, especially for the South Node in Libra, we're either going to learn to get along or we're going to re-imprint old hurtful relating patterns. And that can be on an individual relationship level. And obviously it can be on a collective level as well. And so I highlighted the three major aspects that are going on right now in this chart. And pre-call, Ryan, you had asked what some of Jeffrey Wolf Green's principles are with eclipses. It's going to stem from the transiting of the nodes. And so in JWolf-GEA, the signs that the nodes are transiting will represent what we call the surface issues, or the issues that appear to be presenting themselves in the immediacy of the moment. And then EA always will put a special emphasis on the rulers of those signs. And that's where the deeper issues are that we are working to evolve on an emotional, egoic basis. So with the South Node in Libra, the deeper issues that all of us are having to work through are Venusian issues, Venus ruling Libra. So you would go look and see personally, where is Venus in your natal chart? Where is that transiting Venus taking place in your chart in any given moment during that 18-month transit of the nodes? North Node in Aries, the deeper issues of really evolving and moving forward are going to be related to Mars, wherever that is in your chart on a natal basis, wherever it is transiting at the times, again, that anything is coming up for you momentarily. Well, as we know with these nodes in Aries Libra, we're going to have a Mars retrograde initiated before the nodes leave Aries Libra. So it's almost like the end of this nodal axis transit. Mars is going to kind of kick things off, emphasize things. What do they say? Go out with a bang or something like that. Anyway, just a little side note for you on how we look at the transits of the nodal axis and their rulers on deeper levels. Signs, surface issues, rulers of those signs, the deepest issues that we are working with, again, on an egoic or emotional basis. And so I don't need to monologue here. Marie or Ryan, if you've been, Marie, I heard you say you were looking at the eclipse charts. If you want to jump in. Another thing that I do in addition, though, quickly, in addition to setting any charts for Washington, D.C., I always will go to 0 Aries risings. For me, you know, speaking internationally all over the world, if I just make it generic for everybody, then the energy is similar for all of us as we look at it. Yes, we can always draw a chart up for where we are personally with the eclipses. However, that's kind of just a little bit of my background for having a tendency to use Aries risings. Again, Marie, Ryan, have you been, what have you noticed as you looked at the South Node eclipse charts?
You know, what I tend to do with eclipse charts is I have to look at the birth chart first of the individual, of the country, of the person who is involved, because that's going to tell me what the goal is for that nodal axis. It's also going to tell me what the goal is for Mars, because as you can see, as you're saying here, we've got Mars and Venus, you know, which we have to look at. And so if I want to be able to read the chart for the eclipse, I have to, like I said, look at the birth chart for the individual or the country. Now, with the South Node, of course, we're looking at karma that has ripened. You know, what is it this individual or this country or this person has come into this incarnation to work on? And of course, with you know, when we're looking at the South Node in, you know, in Virgo, or, you know, when we're looking at the South Node, we've got to look at it from the viewpoint of just a bit negatively. You know, yes, there are gifts in that South Node because we have all worked really hard to create the energy and the gifts of that South Node. We've had plenty of lifetimes working on it. In addition to that, we also have parts of that South Node of ourselves that still need purification, that still need to be worked on. And typically what happens in an individual or with an individual or country is, excuse me, we manifest a bit of both. We manifest that shadow, and we also manifest the positive aspects there too. In order to get to that North Node, which, you know, we're looking at a North Node in Aries, it's going to take a lot of courage to work on those South Node issues and move more towards the North Node, which is in Aries, which, you know, when we look at Aries, we're looking at the god of war. And when we look at, you know, when we're looking at Libra, or when we're looking at Libra, we're looking at Venus. Now, Venus, of course, we know she is, in my view, she's more than the goddess of love. She is also the goddess of love. But when we're talking about love, what type of love are we talking about? Are we with relationships? Are we talking about our relationships to ourselves, to humanity, to our family, to our lover? What type of love are we really referring to? And In addition to that, Venus will fight. She will go to war because she will go to war for right human relationship, because that's ultimately what this is all about. What is our right human relationship to ourselves, to other people? That is ultimately what she is about, because she is, remember, Neptune is the higher octave for Venus. And so we're looking at a bigger love, but we have to actually work really hard to get there. So when we're looking at Venus and we see Venus in Virgo, we're looking at, I'm sorry, when we see, why did I say Virgo? I want her to be in Virgo, but she's not. When we see Venus, we know that we've got a lot of work to do still on all of our relationships. And it's not going to be easy work, because when we're looking at Libra, with Libra, it's neither left nor right. It's the middle path. And I'm not talking just politically here. I'm talking about in our lives too. What is the middle road? That Buddhist term of walk, and it takes courage to walk the middle road and not get caught up in the emotions, in the wanting to be right. When we look at Mars, I mean, because we've got to marry Venus and Mars, regardless of their aspect. You know, what are they asking here? And so, Ryan, what would you like to add to that?
Ryan, with his out of bounds Moon and Mercury by progression, is going to take this and slightly augment it a little bit. As an organic farmer, I always like to find my astrological correlates in natural processes. How is it happening in the 3D? Well, we humans are, one of the things they say is we humans are here to maybe anchor heaven on earth, or make this place a beautiful garden, or take whatever magic or spirit or mystery that's within us and find a way to ground that and grow and evolve. That's why I do this evolutionary astrology stuff, to say, hey, these are ways we can grow, we can evolve, we can make this a more beautiful garden. So if I consider an eclipse is a temporary interruption in the normal electromagnetic gravitational flow between the Earth and the sun and the moon. When those come into an alignment, they hit the nodes of the moon, there's this interruption. Now, we have to go kind of esoterically here, because I don't know, I can't prove it, but something magical happens during eclipses. Sometimes the moon is blood red, sometimes the sun disappears. What's going on here? It's mysterious, it's magical. And so when we enter those mysterious and magical realms, we can use words like spirit, or soul, or past lives. None that I can necessarily prove unequivocally, but things that, you know, enter into those magical realms, where if there is an interruption in the normal electromagnetic and gravitational flow between the sun, moon, and earth, energies can leave this realm. Energies can come into this realm. I can't prove it, it's conjecture. But if we were to agree on this, and if we were to make the assumption that we have had past lives and we're growing and evolving as energetic beings of what, love or light or consciousness, I don't know, then it would stand to reason, or one could make an assumption, that during an eclipse, energies leave. Oh, I'm done with those patterns. During an eclipse, oh, here's this new information coming into our realm, our sphere, and maybe we can do something with it. So when I consider the transiting nodes or a transiting eclipse, this is Ryan's system, a transiting node, transiting eclipse, that shows, again, to me, where we can release energies and where we can open up to some new information coming into our consciousness. And so eclipses, all these awesome, amazing times where we have an opportunity to evolve collectively. We also have an opportunity to devolve collectively and repeat the same patterns and those same patterns over and over again. And those same patterns are shown in the South Node. Here's Ryan's system. This is purely me, and this is purely conjecture, but I believe, and it's worked flawlessly actually in my readings lately, that the South Node of the moon represents a really basic, beautiful intention for manifesting into this realm in the first place. So like if the United States has an Aquarius South Node, then the main original intention for existence for the United States is Aquarian. Hey, we can all get along and be individuals, and I'm not going to mess with you, and you're not going to mess with me, and I'm going to do my own thing. But that can get cold. We can dissociate. Or on the other side, we could conform or want everybody else to conform with us. Thank goodness we have some Leo in there. And so our country, from Ryan's point of view, is looking to integrate the Aquarius Leo polarity, me and you, and how do we all get along? How do I maintain my originality? And I want to have a motocross field next to your organic farm. How do we get along? Well, welcome to many themes that are present in the United States. So if there are eclipses that are somehow triggering our natal chart or the United States chart, we have opportunities to let go of old patterns, old information, old karmic ways of doing things, and bring in new ways of integrating new information. So my hope, and just to close this out, my hope with all the success, all the Mars and Leo action happening by transit and opposition to the South Node of the United States, my hope is that we have more of the healthy Leo energy coming in to remind us and show us, hey, we can all be exactly who we are, and we can honor and respect Aquarius, that everybody is their own king or queen of their own world. We can all get together. We can all get along. That's the hope of what I would love to see throughout this election cycle. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the opposite's coming up. Polarity, hardcore polarity. The Trumpers hate the Harrises and vice versa, and everybody's at each other's throat. But if I look at the chart of the United States, it's more like, how can we all get along even though we're different? Those, to me, those issues are up in a big way for the rest of this year or longer, like going into next spring in a big way. And so the more we can all honor each other's own unique processes and where they're at, and not try to make everybody else adhere to our own particular point of view. But what do we do with all the policies? Oh my gosh, here we are, discuss. So my hope, again, in closing, my hope is that the nodal activity in the USA chart for the next 6 months, my hope is that it encourages us all to, oh, you like President Trump. Oh, but you do like cheeseburgers. I like cheeseburgers too. Hey, let's all get along on the cheeseburgers. We don't have to talk politics right now, but from those cheeseburgers, I don't know where I get this, but from those cheeseburgers, how can we get to the next thing that we can agree on? Oh, you love your children. I do too. Oh, you want world peace. I do too. Or how do we get there? I don't know. But my hope is that that discussion is healthy as opposed to where it is now, which is not. Okay.
Well, I mean, we're also looking at, Mars is in Cancer. So this is about the home. Mars in Cancer, of course, has to answer to that moon in Pisces. And the moon in Pisces is certainly about the collective. And you know, the bigger Neptunian, Jupiterian signature. But I do believe that we're going to get where we need to be. It's just that we are, in my view, especially with all of the eclipses that have happened for, quite a few years, as a matter of fact, we've been being shown where we've worked through issues and also what issues we have yet to complete. So, and if you look at this from the standpoint of when the country, of course, became a country, and here in the US, our karma has ripened because, you've got to look at Pluto too. You've got to bring Pluto into this. And what we are, what is our goal? What is it that we are truly working on? Yes, we've had the Pluto return already. But when we, excuse me, when we look at Pluto, where Pluto is now, it's back in Capricorn. It's back into the old system. And it's doing its last dance, of course, for which, as we know, there's a 248-year cycle with Pluto. So we won't be back here again. But it's back here now for a reason. It wants to clean up some things, but it also, we've been imprinted for, since 2008 with Pluto in Capricorn, which is, of course, opposite of Cancer. So we have to look at that angle too. Pluto is a huge wounding. That is the original wounding that we have as an individual and also as a country. So we certainly can't leave that out. And Pluto, I believe, is going to be in Capricorn on the election day for the country. For other countries, I have no idea where it's going to be, but you want, where it's going to hit in your charts in other countries. But everybody is dealing with Pluto in Capricorn right now. So when we look at these, this nodal axis of Pisces, Libra, what is the transformation that actually still has to happen here? And yeah. So I'll stop talking.
Well, in addition to the Pluto return that, astrologers have been talking about, and, Pluto's new phase, its natal position, even though it's retrograding back into Capricorn. Just a side note there, finishing off you, Marie. I've been looking at Pluto coming back into the last third of the last degree, barely 20 minutes in, back into Capricorn, talking space, not time here. And then it goes direct before the election. I've been looking at, well, this is going back into Capricorn one more time to let go and say goodbye to everything that we do not like about Pluto Capricorn, all the distortions that we've seen with Pluto Capricorn. So I'm not, I guess I'm trying to put my own personal hope that even though the USA election will be with, Pluto in that last third of a degree, it's still very, very close to Aquarius. It's dipped into Aquarius twice. It is just that back and forth between those two archetypes, and we might see the distortions of those archetypes, the plutocrats and the Aquarian elitism, but we also might see enough of the masses that just say, can we just have peace again? Can we, like Ryan said, can we get along again? But the other thing that we've been dealing with through this USA Pluto return is we are having I think it's our second Neptune opposition to itself. And this is where the eclipse is, with the USA, right on this you know, Mars, Neptune, natal square. And that's when I was saying, you know, we have this mutable T-square with Jupiter just getting ready to turn stationary retrograde. So it's really, to me, triggering a lot of our own ideologies with the Neptune opposition. You know, the distortions in J with GEA, we say any archetype can be distorted or naturally expressed. Those are terms I like better than quote unquote good, evil, religious. But the distortions of Neptune in Virgo is, you know, I'm right, you're wrong. And so we've got that going on collectively as our country. And I think what's happening is this lunar eclipse is just really exposing it into consciousness. And how are we going to choose to get along together as a group? How are we going to find that Neptune and Aries courage to agree to disagree instead of pulling out a gun?
Yeah.
I always like it when lunar eclipses come first, because it just exposes all of that emotional energy and all the emotional opposition and whatever has been building up emotionally, egoically from the last eclipse season. And then when the solar eclipse follows it, it's kind of like, okay, lunar eclipse, here's the issues. Solar eclipse, here's how we can move forward. Even when we're on a south node eclipse in or south node eclipse season, you know, the solar eclipse coming up is still going to give us opportunities for moving forward. And I think if you just look generically here for a moment, we're just going to come off that Mercury exterior conjunction to the sun. Even though they're all hanging out with the south node, everything that we've been saying here up to this point, how are we going to release things? How are we going to give birth to things? How are we going to give forth the gifts? I'm not going to remember the astrologer. It was I'll think of his name sooner or later, but an astrologer back in the 80s. He said the south node is either your Achilles heel or your gifts. And it can be both. Again, here's the distortions and natural expressions. And so maybe there is an intensity that might come along here in the beginning of October with this solar eclipse that says, well, how are we going to get along, especially for us in the USA and in this country? So stay tuned.
Yeah, this is
Can I
good.
throw out one thing?
Oops, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks. The thing that concerns me is in the South Node patterning, like South Node Libra. Oh, I have this sole intention to bring peace to the world, to be at peace, to walk through the garden. Everybody get along. It's nice. I've got some tomatoes. You've got some garlic. You know, together we can make a nice pasta sauce. There's some, you know, there's a great intention of South Node in Libra. The shadow of South Node in Libra comes like, oh, you're not sharing your peppers with me. Well, how can I manipulate you into that? How can I look nice? How can I bribe you? How can I, just make little sweet little lies in order to get to that, you know, peace at any cost. Oh, now you don't want to be peaceful? Okay, well, meet my brother Mars. He gave me his gun. Here you go. All in the name of peace. And so the peace at any costs part is the one part that concerns me when I look at this chart, I'm like, oh gosh, looks like everybody wants peace. How are we going to get it?
Well, and the other thing is, what's peace for one person isn't always peace for another.
Totally.
That's also the bottom line. So that goes back to I'm right, you're wrong.
So I'm so excited actually that these issues are up, Because
Yeah.
I think they wouldn't be up if we weren't ready to deal with them, you know?
Well,
And-
this is true. And this planet as a whole is a Ray 4 planet. And that means that this planet is all about harmony through conflict. For some reason, not for some reason, our planet, we're here for advanced soul growth. And to get that advanced soul growth, we decided to put ourselves into a pressure cooker so that we could evolve. That's the bigger picture. And so when we look at Venus, and who is still the ruler here, and we're looking at where she is at this, you know, at the eclipse that's coming up in October, you know, she's in Scorpio. That's death. That's death to the old. That's transformation. That goes back to Pluto again. And when we look at Pluto, Pluto is in the last decan, we use decanate, or the last decan. And when we look at that, that's of course the anaretic degree. That is I look at that as postdoctorate, getting you will get this or you will die. And Pluto really doesn't care whether you die or not, as long as you transform. And so you also think about Pluto in the last decan. That means that there is an element of Virgo with this Pluto. When you look at the decanates, the different decans. So that last decan here, because we've got Capricorn, we've got to bring in Virgo. So, and what is Virgo all about? Purification. This, to me, the purification is what we are going through. And we're purifying ourselves individually. When we're looking at our country, at our families, at our relationships, it all starts with the individual. And you know, we've got that Mars in Cancer. So that's of course about family, but we are individuals that are in a big family. In order to transform, in order to do that Scorpio work, remember Venus is asking us to transform ourselves, our belief systems, dig deep. Whatever the truth is, or whatever we believe the truth is, it's always bigger than that. So anyway, that's where I go with that.
I see that water grand trine on, you know, this solar eclipse, and well, I think I might have put it in there somewhere. Well, no, I did it on the US, but it's kind of like, I look at trines sometimes as couch potato aspects. You know, it's just so easy to remain entrenched in the energy that came before. You know, trines are rewards of prior efforts. But if we've not made an effort, then we will remain in the same old patterning. And so this is interesting to me because here again, the rulers of this nodal axis in this grand trine with, you know, Saturn retrograde in Pisces and dissolving old realities. But as that comes along, how strongly are we wanting to just cling to those old realities rather than really have an emotional evolution, which is what would be, you know, some of the intent of a solar eclipse, creating those emotional new beginnings. So I think both of these eclipses are just, and again, I speak from the USA perspective, I think they're just such a reflection of the intensity of what's going on in this country. And are we going to you know, learn how to play in the same sandbox together? Or are we going to entrench ourselves into me versus you, us versus them, which can be the distortions of this nodal axis?
Mhm. Except, yeah, Mars is pretty powerful here, because Mars is the focal point. Looks like Mars is the focal point of a yod there. I'm sorry, not a yod, but a T-square.
It's still within orb for me with
Yeah.
that. So yeah, Mars
Yeah.
is active in both lunar and solar eclipse charts.
Mhm.
So
And remember, think about, well, when I think of Mars and Cancer, my mind automatically goes back to the Pluto and Cancer generation and World War I, and also our country. And you know, we will go to war for family, or what we perceive as family. Our problem is we perceive family in a small way. We're not, in this country, we're not perceiving family as it actually is. And it's global. Yes, this is a small nuclear family here in the US, but our family is truly global, and we've been fighting that. And that isn't going to stand.
So what brings family together? What is it that brings family together? You know, it's like I think of my own family. Oh, you know, you were doing this. Oh, you didn't take out the garbage or whatever. And there's definitely frustrations that occur. And there's been rifts. I've experienced rifts in family, extended family. What can bring them back together? You know what can bring them back together? You know what can bring us all together? And I hate to
A good meal.
dark. A good meal, yeah, that would be nice, but why would they be at the house in the first place? It's often, and I hate to be so realistic about this, please somebody just throw some light on it. I'm usually the optimistic one, but it's a crisis. Oh, what's going to cross the lines? Right now, it's like, oh, your politics against my politics. Well, what if politics didn't matter and there was something else that was more important, like getting a meal? How could we work together to get a meal? I don't like your president. You don't like my president. Yeah, but we both need to eat. So my concern is that there could be a crisis that would be like, okay, political boundary, let those go. We're all humans. So in order to subvert a crisis, hey, the aliens land. Well, maybe, what could it be that could bring us together? A really great idea that it would be good for us to all get together. I would love for that to be it. So my concern, again, is that if we can't get to that place where, you know, Neptune and Pisces, hey, we're all in this together, you know, the ship sinks. Okay, we're all here together. Now, what do we, you know, political affiliations dissolve pretty quickly.
Yeah, we've already been shown that, I believe, with the pandemic, because we really had to help each other. And I mean, in Mars, you know, when you think about Mars and Cancer, oh my goodness, when you think about Mars and Cancer on the big level, Cancer is the mother. And of course, that's another topic. And she's here. She hasn't gone anywhere. And, you know, she will, anyway, yeah. So I think you're right.
Is that a stationary Uranus on October 2nd? Oh no, that's retrograde there.
yeah,
It's
it's
a retrograde.
Uranus went retrograde September 1st. Well, here's something we can point out before we move on. I don't know if you guys have been following this, but on both the lunar eclipse and solar eclipse charts, Uranus and Pluto come within 2.5 degrees of trining each other.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah, go for it.
And they will actually make 5 trines, Gemini, Aquarius, in 26, 27, 28.
They're going to help
Again,
each other.
trines being rewards
Yeah.
of prior efforts, and the last Uranus-Pluto conjunction was mid-Virgo, remember, in 1965, all those 65 babies
Oh, yeah.
charts, as I call
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
You know, and so here we are 1/3 of the cycle around from those seed thoughts. And so will we, with 2 air signs, Gemini, Aquarius, you know, continue into worse splits, you know, globally, every country throughout the rest of this decade? Or will we start to have some type of shift? Like Ryan was saying, what event, you know, happens to show us how small our political divisions really are when it comes to survival on the planet?
Mhm.
You know,
Well, I mean, when
sometimes
you,
I
yeah,
think it,
yeah,
I'm like Ryan, I've always said, well, wait till the aliens show up and then you can see how much you want to fight each other. But the
exactly.
other possibility that I think, especially with Uranus, Pluto, and even with trines, is a major Earth event. You know, the volcano that creates a cold winter for 3 seasons. And, you know, how do we survive? To think that we won't have anything like that, yeah, it could happen tomorrow.
Pole
So,
shift.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I read an article recently about the human-made activity on the planet, the climate change. It's caused the spinning of the Earth to slow down, and it's starting to shift the polar axis.
yeah,
So-
There are, I live in Wisconsin, lilacs bloom in May. And I saw a lilac shrub blooming in my neighborhood last week. What's up? As a flower farmer, I'm like, that, boy, I could make some cash off that, off that pole shift. But no, I don't know. Lilacs blooming in September in Wisconsin.
Well, yeah, and think
Normal?
about the aurora borealis that we, you know, we saw down south. I mean, that's something that well,
those are solar cycles. That's the solar max. The sunspot cycles happen every 11 years. And by the way, that's going to highlight in 25. They say that our northern lights, I live in the northern plains. They say that our northern lights are going to be the most intense in 2025. But again, just an 11-year cycle, Marie. Not to say that
we hadn't seen it here before.
yeah. Well,
That's,
in our
yeah,
lifetime.
well, in California, they saw it in Florida, for goodness sake. I've only seen the northern lights in Alaska and Wyoming, and I know it happens up in the Nordic countries, but seeing it down here that's huge. That's a shift.
Sure. So Sue, shall we go to your Mars-Pluto opposition chart?
sure.
Woohoo!
And while you're doing that, for anybody who is listening, we're going to have a Mars retrograde cycle coming up. Hold on, my little notes here. December 6th through February 24, 25. Mars is going to go retrograde at 6 Leo back to 17 Cancer. And during that time period with this Mars retrograde, Mars will make 3 oppositions to Pluto. November 3rd, that one will be in Cancer Capricorn. And then we'll have one January 3rd and April 26th in Leo Aquarius. And so here is the first one, which will be 2 days before the USA presidential election on November 5th. So this Mars-Pluto first opposition is going to be very active in our elections. Will it bring the violence? Stay tuned.
Do we know when the last time we had the retrogrades with Mars and Leo.
And Leo Cancer.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna do a little bit of quick math. Mars is a 2-year cycle. 2 times 12 is 24. Probably somewhere between 22 to 28 years ago, because Mars retrogrades go forward in the zodiac. You know, Mars averages at 24 to 26 months around the zodiac, has one retrograde cycle every 2 years, and it's almost always going forward each sign, and every once in a while it skips a sign. So
so 28 years ago, what would that have
probably,
been?
let's just say 25 years ago.
Okay,
And if I got that right, yeah, I'm just gonna do the math in my head
so
again.
that would have been about
Twin
99.
Towers?
90, that would have been, I'm sorry, not 99, that would have been
It would be,
uh,
yeah, that'd be somewhere right in there. Hey, guess what I got?
99.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll look it up for us, Marie. What were you gonna say?
Well, I'm just, because it would be, because I see everything as a spiral. So but the spiral, it comes back around, but not to the same degree, but it has, and and the other planets are in other parts of the sky, of course, but the energy of that last time it was in Leo would be reactivated. And when I think about 99, I, of course, go to Y2K. We were, yeah.
It's earlier than that. It's earlier than that.
There was also one in 2009 that was all in Leo, from 19 degrees to 0 degrees. Before that, let's see, the
92, 93, we had a Mars retrograde in Cancer.
92, 93.
right.
92, 93.
We were in a depression, that we were in a recession in this country during 92, 93. And then 2009, we were in a recession with the housing market.
And it turned direct in Leo in 95. And let's see. Before
So
that,
Marie, were you relating Mars and Cancer to recession, depression energy?
That's why I was asking what was going on back then, because this is about the family when you're looking at Mars in Cancer, but Mars in Leo, it's so individualistic. It's about me, and so there's a relationship there. And so coming forward now, how have we progressed with that me versus being looking at things on a more universal way? And like Ryan was saying, feeding the world, or seeing ourselves as a part of a huge collective. Because this is, this opposition is happening at 29 degrees. So, we're looking at, we're still looking at the purification part with the Pluto, because Virgo comes into there with Capricorn with the old systems. But remember, with Pluto and Capricorn, there's a lot of strength and energy, and because Pluto and Cancer are two sides of the same coin. So when we look at that opposition, what is an optimal relationship between Cancer and Capricorn?
so there was also
Ryan,
a similar degree retrograde from 11 degrees Leo to 22 degrees Cancer in 1977 and 78, for what that's worth.
Okay, 77 and 78. Was that the end of the Vietnam War? When did that end? Anyway, I mean,
Somewhere
dating
right around
myself.
there.
Around there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So what's
I
the theme? I'm just looking at the theme. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure, sure. Well, I was just gonna ask Ryan for his thoughts on these 3 Mars-Pluto oppositions. I know that you have to leave soon, Ryan, so want to give you some time.
Oh, you are so sweet. Yes, Mars, Pluto opposition. I always think of oppositions as integration. And
Mhm.
so how do we integrate our collective power, Pluto, and our individual power, Mars? How do we not be afraid of the dark anymore? How do we not be afraid of another person who likes a different political candidate than we like? So then in that tension that arises, it's in our face. Oh my God, I have to love my neighbor even though I don't like their politics. Because the alternative is war. The alternative is civil war. The alternative is my Mars can beat up your Pluto, and let's see how well that works. And so how do we integrate our own personal power with our observation and engagement with the wound that may have disempowered us in the first place? This is
Mhm.
huge. This is, I mean, it happens, like, you were saying, every 2.2 years a Mars-Pluto opposition. But in that, we get this opportunity, another opportunity, these opportunities, again, going back to what we were all saying before, looks like it's in our face. In opposition, you got to deal with it. There's no sugarcoating it. Oh, no, let's just move that over, to a trine. That's not an opposition. That doesn't work. So we have to do something. We have to act. Mars wants to act. Pluto needs to admit and acknowledge. So what is going to happen that puts it in our face? How about this? A contested election. Nobody's predicted that one yet. But would that, put some things really in our face that we have to deal with as a country? And this is, US specific. But one thing that's really important to note is that, I mean, according to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's the edge of the world in all of Western civilization. And so the United States, like the representative of all of, Western culture, so all of Western culture is at this reckoning place with our soul wound. Can we get over it? Can we get over it? Can we heal it? Can we integrate it? Can we admit it and humble ourselves enough? Some Neptune and Aries foreshadowing there. Can we humble ourselves enough to be like, oh yeah, I get to have my own opinion and I can respect yours too, even if it's the exact opposite. Nobody really wants, I don't know anyone. And I know people on way far ends of the political spectrums. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants to hurt anybody else. Everybody wants peace. We just have different ways of going about it. My hope is that this Mars-Pluto opposition, along with everything else astrologically, is going to put it in our face and say, hey, you kind of have to now. And I don't know what that's going to be about. My hope as an evolutionary astrologer, and what I'd suggest to my clients if I saw something like this, is how can we deal with that right now consciously before it's put in our face? And that's part of, I think, our task as evolutionary astrologers to say to our clients, say to the people in a situation like this is, hey, we can see in the future that the weather's gonna change to a place where it might be really important that we get along. So how can we start that now? The more we do that, I think the like now, for all those listening, now, how can we, that can help to mitigate the intensity of what may be coming. That being said, is anything going to necessarily mitigate the intensity of a Mars-Pluto opposition? not in my chart, other than consciousness and, you know, engaging it with as much optimism as possible. So,
Well, you still have to look at that, the rulers too. So you've still got to bring in the moon in Sag,
yes, without a doubt.
and we have to bring in Saturn in Pisces. So the moon in Sag, of course. So think about this: Jupiter creeps in, doesn't it? Because we've got the moon in Sag, ruled by Jupiter, and we've got Saturn in Pisces, and one of its rulers is Jupiter. So you still have to go to Jupiter in Gemini, don't you? This is, and Gemini is that place, you know, I actually like that Jupiter. Well, I love Jupiter in Gemini anyway. But when you look at Gemini and what it's all about, it's going to, it's about the communication, but it's also where we can elevate our consciousness with this opposition. I know it's not the ruler of the chart, but it's ruling the two rulers of this opposition. And so looking at, you know, looking at that Jupiter and Gemini and its aspects to other planets. What is it? It is trine the part of fortune, which is fantastic. What else is it doing? It is.
Well, it's in a tight opposition to Venus in Sag.
Oh yeah, it sure is.
Wow, so there it is, Marie. There's the answer. Great. The answer is to listen. Oh, you have a different political affiliation than I do. Well, rather than listening to the news because they're telling me what to think, maybe I should go to my neighbor with the yard sign different than mine and be like, I'm really curious. I mean, chances are we both want, you know, a happy world for our kids. How do you want to go about doing that? And rather than listening to the pundits, or rather than listening to the astrologers on the forum, well, listen to us a little, but you know, where we can, you know, have the conversation with the opposition. Oh, curiosity.
Yeah.
There's some Gemini. Wow.
Hey,
like
and guess what?
guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Sag.
I don't know anything about that.
But yeah, that's where we end up. That's huge. Because Sag and Gemini, they're not necessarily going to go to war. They're going to talk. And they may not stop talking, but at least they're not fighting.
I don't know, Marie, on that one. I mean, most wars are fought in the name of religion. Sagittarius,
Well,
Jupiter.
They are, but when Gemini is involved, I mean, Sag is higher thought. If we're looking beyond, we have to look beyond religion. It is what is truth. And, you know, Jupiter in Gemini, the Venus in Sag has to answer to Jupiter in Gemini. She doesn't get to just do what she wants because she's got to go to Jupiter and Gemini. Gemini is going to talk, and it's going to anyway, that's my view.
Well, let's be careful here because Gemini's got an opinion and Sagittarius has a belief. And if my opinion is actually a belief in truth, then I'm going to think that my opinion is truth. There's the shadow of that.
Yeah, there is the shadow of that. Absolutely.
And so I agree with you. The higher mind, the higher thought of Sagittarius is ultimately conjoined the galactic center where we don't know anything. I don't know So ultimate Sag is ha ha ha, I have no idea. And ultimate Gemini is, oh, that's interesting, what else? And so
Exactly.
we would hope that their conversations are that higher level.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck's going on, man, but I'm going to get my kicks before the whole house goes up in flames, said Sagittarian Jim Morrison. And then Gemini laughs about it and says, no, can you get real? And then Sag says, okay, how about this lofty idea? And then Gemini says, can you get real? And then Sag bounces it back. And then that's what we want, that dialogue, that bouncing
Yeah.
back of. So the solution is for anyone who supports Kamala Harris to walk into a bar flying a Trump flag and have a healthy conversation.
Well,
And
yeah. I lived
what
in
could go
Utah.
wrong?
I lived in Utah for 18 years, and talk about an opposition, but living in another culture, you have to learn to listen to the opposition or you're going to be crucified. So, I mean, that's why I think the Jupiter in Gemini, I like this opposition as the solution for the opposition with Mars-Pluto, because that Mars-Pluto opposition, it's extremely intense because Cancer and Capricorn, I personally think there are some oppositions are more intense than others. And with the opposition with Jupiter and Venus, they're the two benefics. And even in evolutionary astrology, of course, we don't, with the Stephen Forrest School, we don't necessarily look at benefics. However, Jupiter and Venus are going to be, I think, an easier opposition to work with than the Mars-Pluto. We're still going to get transformation though. But anyway, that's just my viewpoint.
Yeah. Hey, Sue, I want to bring up my Mercury retrograde. I don't have a chart, but I have okay, so I'm gonna, okay, there we go. Okay, so hold on. I have to get a few slides down to where I put this. There it is.
So perhaps this is a great time for Ryan to bow out and say thanks everybody so much for thank you, Sue and Robin, for holding this space, and Kim,
Yeah.
brilliant. Marie, so good to see you. We should chat sometime.
Yeah, we should. Text me. You've got my number.
Have your people call my people.
Have your people. Oh God. Yeah, that means I'm gonna call you.
Thanks for
Awesome.
joining us, Ryan.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Ryan, have a good day.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
I didn't draw a chart up, but what we're going to have after the election is we're going to be in the midst of Jupiter's 4-month retrograde cycle in Gemini from 21 to 11 degrees. And in the midst of that, after the election, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde cycle in Sagittarius. So they're mutual receptions in each other's signs. And so I just thought I'd put up dates for you because, of course, in each other's signs, they're going to actually have 3 oppositions to each other between Mercury and Jupiter. Now, I got a date wrong here. It was 2021 that we had the Electoral Count Reform Act. And this is where they clarified how local election boards and states have to certify their electoral votes. And the deadline for doing that is December 11th. That's not when they go to Congress, which, then they do another, not another certification of it, which always happens in January. But this is where, again, All of our local election boards and states have a deadline right here to certify. And what the Electoral Count Reform Act did, it made it mandatory that they had to certify. Because what happened back in 2020 is we had the conservative Republican side, we had local people refusing to certify their elections, and they took them to court. And so the whole idea of a contested presidential election, especially if Donald Trump loses, is just absolutely magnified by these planets in Mercury and Gemini, in Gemini and Sagittarius. And Sag in general, you know, it rules the legal system. So I just thought it was interesting to put these dates up for everybody to be able to see this.
Kim-Marie,
I would say, yes.
a point of information about 2020, there was an eclipse in Sagittarius on the day that certification was supposed to take place, which kind of, you know, threw a monkey wrench into the whole.
Yeah. I
Process.
didn't remember that part.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out for everybody. It's just looking at these two retrograde cycles and their oppositions in each other's signs. For me, it's maybe one of the indicators that, you know, Kamala Harris might actually win, but it's just going to be absolute chaos. So I wanted to just show this screen to you before we looked at, you know, the other, or at least the second Mars-Pluto opposition, if we want to, because all this is going to be contained into Mars going retrograde December 6th again, remember? And so right along this time period where Mercury retrograde conjuncts Sun, highlight of the Jupiter retrograde opposition with the Sun, we have Mars going retrograde on the 6th of December at 6 degrees Leo. And this is real close to this time period where, again, local election boards and states all have to certify their electoral votes in their own states. So just putting that out there for us into the future.
Well, it's actually good that they have to certify, because, you know, you can hijack an election.
Yes, exactly. And I got to point out, I got 2022, but it was actually 2021. And if you don't remember, that's, you know, in 21-22, Democrats had, you know, the executive and legislative branches. And so they were able to pass this through coming off of January 6th insurrection.
So what happens if they don't certify, even though it's a law?
Well, what happened in the last time, there were probably Democratic groups, but there were groups that would sue, and judges would force these electors to say, you must do what the facts are. So there's a lot of that on the Republican side, that, you know, little state laws that or county laws that are being passed that say, you know, we don't have to follow the facts. So look at this, how that can, you know, get stirred up. Now, hopefully what you would see is that wherever this is going to happen, let's say states where it's real tight, you might have your state Supreme Courts coming down and saying, this is the law, this is what you've got to follow. But it could definitely be setting us up for some chaos in some places.
Yeah, it sure
You know,
can.
especially the battleground states.
Right. Yeah, because Jupiter is definitely the law. We can't, in Jupiter and Gemini in particular. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. So I'd say, Sue, let's just go to that second, the Mars retrograde opposition to Pluto, the one on January 3rd. Because, you know, that's going to come real close then to Congress certifying whoever, you know, is going to win the election. Personally, for me, so for anybody listening, down the road, the last time we did one of these little talks on the EA Zoom was July 21st. And that was the morning in which Joe Biden ended his campaign and endorsed Kamala Harris. And we were just, you know, all over ourselves, at least I was. And so, you know, here we are a few months down the road. Personally, for me, I go between Kamala squeaking it out and enough of a silent majority just going, we're tired of Donald Trump. We've seen his act now for 8-9 years, and we're just tired of it. You know, we really, and I live, if you don't know this, I live in an extremely conservative area, South Dakota in the Northern Plains. I think we voted for Trump by 67% in 2020. I think we were just second to Wyoming, who was the strongest vote for Donald Trump. So, Marie, like you said, in Utah, I'm familiar with living in a conservative area of the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you really do learn how to, or I learned how to, I did a lot of listening, I should say, living in Utah. And I also, I mean, I gave my opinion, but I was never giving my opinion in a argumentative way, or I still had respect for the, you know, for others when I was talking to them, even if I didn't agree. And that's where, because honestly, in my view, you have to change hearts. But when you're changing hearts, are you asking another person's heart to change to your viewpoint? Or are you, you know, what are you asking that heart in that other individual to do? Because like I said, it's still all about right human relationship. And when we're looking at this nodal axis on this day, you know, that's technically the last degree, you know, because of the nodes moving backwards. And so this is huge. This is absolutely huge. So it's, you know, when I think back to that election in 2016, you know, there were people who called it for Hillary. And of course, there were people who were devastated when she lost, and there were people who were happy when she lost. When I contemplated that, and I contemplate this too, the issue that we have is we tend not to look at the consciousness of the country and how we are to evolve and what we need to evolve. And I felt that we needed something that was in our face that we couldn't deny as far as the shadow. And that's what we needed. And that is what got us to this point. That is what has helped to wake us up. My concern is I don't think enough people are as awake as we need to be as a whole.
I think misinformation, unfortunately, plays a really large role in people's viewpoints. And I see that indicated a little bit by that Jupiter and Gemini being in the 8th house and then Neptune being in Pisces. And, you know, and the Scorpio rising.
It's to the, well, I can't remember what's the exact number of the statistic is, but I remember reading recently somewhere like, let's just say 70% of Republicans think the election was stolen in 2020. So we still, yes, have a lot of that misinformation that's out there, and that's, you know, also a concern of these Mercury Jupiter retrograde cycles, you know, especially if Kamala wins.
Yeah, and we also have coming up, of course, which won't happen until 2026. You know, Saturn and Neptune are going to conjunct in Aries. Right now, we're dealing with a lot of Pisces, a lot of shadow Pisces. I mean, we've got the good stuff going on too, but it's the shadow that we see predominantly. And so, you know, I of course have no idea who's going to win this election, because while I believe I know the big picture for the country and the world, I have no idea how the universe, how the divine, because we're not acting only on our own. And remember, the divine loves both parties. The divine doesn't see Republican and Democrat. The divine only sees its creation. And so, and so what is, you know, how are we as humans, because this is about humanity. And I see this as a fight for no less than our souls, really, and what it is we're going to be, you know, our relationship with nature, our relationship with each other. I see all of that in this nodal axis. When we look at the South Node in Libra, and we go back to, you know, Venus and what she's asking of us. So, yeah, I was going to say something else, but I've lost my train of thought on that.
Well, at the same time, we're in the midst of 3 Saturn-Jupiter squares, which
Yeah, we
brings
are.
in, you know, the Pisces and the Gemini, and the truth versus belief versus.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's Pluto 1 degree off of their conjunction. I think they're, hold on a second, their conjunction winter solstice 2020 was 0.5 Aquarius.
Right.
So here's Pluto on that point, and they're in that first quarter crises in action, you know, perspective. While I look at, you know, Saturn balsamic Neptune and seeing, you know, the breakdown of form in the ways it doesn't work, we also know that nature doesn't really like a vacuum. So how do we choose to fill up that space that is being, you know, created with the breakdown? And so this is where I think that the Jupiter first quarter square kind of comes in and says, well, let's fill it this way, let's fill it that way. It could be just the continuation of, for instance, the split we have in the United States. But it could also be, you know, because of where I live, I have been able to have the conversations with people who used to be diehard Trumpians, just going, you know, doing the Liz Cheney thing. And her dad came out today and said he was voting for Kamala Harris. They're from Wyoming, if you don't remember Vice President Cheney from Wyoming. But I have ran in, it's, you know, not a lot, but I have been running into the people who say, can't do Trump anymore. I am no longer in favor of Donald Trump. I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I might sit out the election. May not make a difference in my state, but it could make a difference in other areas that just cannot hold their nose and vote for Trump, cannot get themselves to quite vote for Kamala, so they're just backing off.
Yeah, I know people like that too. And it's, and you know, we never know who a person is going to vote for anyway, because we're not privy to it. We're not privy to what they're saying to themselves. We only know what they're saying publicly. And we know that a tidal wave of change is coming, because we still have to look at what Pluto, because we're being set up for Pluto in Aquarius for 20 years.
The other thing that's a little interesting with this second opposition chart, you know, which is going to come when Congress certifies whoever has won the majority of electoral votes. The other thing that I think is interesting is look at the moon on January 3rd. It is literally sitting on the moon in Aquarius of the July 4th chart.
Oh,
Yes.
And the other thing that I noticed is that look at where the North Node is. That's where the Saturn Neptune conjunction is going to be.
yeah, it
conjunction will
is.
take place.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I actually have more hope for this chart than I did the first one.
Well, this is what, as we're pushing through it, you know, I mean, this is going to be decision time. I mean, January 3rd is, you know, almost the anniversary of January 6th. So, you know, we've got all of this, you know, stuff that we have to push through to get to this point.
Absolutely. And
Right.
I also believe when we want something, I believe you have to say more, you have to focus more on what you want versus what you don't want. Because when you have something you don't want, you will get it if you focus on it. And so with this Pisces energy, using it in a positive way, you know, because our thoughts are things. I don't know where I heard that, but they really are things. And we have to focus on what we want and what we want for the collective. And remember, sometimes what we want for the collective, how do I put this? Most people believe that they are right, regardless of what side you're on, Republican, Democrat, Independent. Most people do. And so when you're, in my view, when you're saying what you want, what you're doing is asking for right action to occur, regardless of what that is. You may not get what you want, but you will get what is good for the collective, because that's what Pluto in Aquarius asks on the higher side of it. It's not individualistic anymore, although, you know, it's quirky and there's some genius in there too. But yeah.
You
just might find you get what you need.
I was thinking that. I was about ready to break into
I saw you
song.
smiling. Thank you, Rolling Stones.
Yeah, and you know, what is it? We still have Mercury and Sag on that day too. That is great.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's a wide opposition to Jupiter, but still. That's mutually receptive too.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we still have Jupiter to turn stationary retrograde. What is it? What did I have up there? October 9th, I think it was, that Jupiter goes stationary retrograde. Yep, October 9th, 2120 Gemini, and Saturn goes direct October 11th. We talked more about this last time, so I don't think we have to bring up any charts, but just in case we have somebody new who is listening to this, the fact of where Gemini or Jupiter is going to go retrograde in Gemini in Donald Trump's chart, I still think that there is mental fracturing for him that's going to come out that we just can't deny anymore.
His people probably already know it.
there are those who do, but there's going to be those that don't know it.
Yeah.
And so the question is does he literally have a physical brain event? You know, there's that possibility, you know, with Jupiter and Gemini, because that's, you know, Gemini with the brain is fracturing. And so, and it's going to go, you know, stationary retrograde on the top of his chart with, I'll just verbally say it, you know, it's going to go, Jupiter's going to go retrograde opposing his moon on his north node, and it's going over Uranus 3 times. And that transit over Uranus, that also brings in the whole brain issues for him. So I just think he's going to continue to fracture. The first Jupiter conjunction over his Uranus was August 22nd.
Mm.
And then the second and third ones are after the election, but just the whole Jupiter in Gemini, I just, I don't know. I see somebody who is grasping at straws, and I see somebody whose brain is literally dementing.
Well, and you know, when you think about Regulus, I think Regulus was on his ascendant at the time of his birth, or I think.
Yes.
And Regulus is the king maker, but it's also the king breaker. Depending on, and that all in how it operates is determined by how you, you know, how you work with that energy. Are you, you know, are you misusing power? Are you
vengeful?
Are you vengeful?
That's what
Yeah.
it says. If you use it for revenge, then there's a downfall.
Mhm.
Right.
And that is definitely definitely coming. You know, I'm not a person who, I don't hate anybody. I just think that yeah, it's not going to bode well. And he's also, the other thing that is going on is he's from a different generation, and it's time for that generation, especially in that level of politics, to step aside.
Well, he's
And
clearly holding a number of different thoughts that he's, like Kim-Marie said, grasping at straws to
Mhm.
keep together.
He is.
I mean, I can see it in you know, in the news releases of his rallies. I mean, he just bounces from one thought to another.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it didn't help that he had Mars going through Gemini there for a while either.
Right.
Um,
Well, and then
but-
all the Leo stuff going through his
Mhm.
12th house and on his Mars. We still have Mercury yet to go over his Mars one more time, and his
Oh, yeah. And, you know, it's unfortunate that he didn't step aside and let somebody else. He didn't step aside like Biden did, because, you know, I think that it would have been better for, you know, the Republican Party if he had have stepped aside, but maybe
Donald
not.
Trump Donald Trump doesn't have the consciousness to do that.
No.
This is true.
truer words were never spoken.
Okay.
True.
Oh, did I say that out loud?
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
one of the
looking-
things that I did this way back in 2017 when Trump won. I just put it right out there. I said every single astrologer comes through their own filter of consciousness, and this is mine. I am not a friend of Donald Trump's. So if you don't like what I have to share, you are welcome to move on. And I have said that for 8 years now.
You and me both, sister.
So has anyone, I'm sure I've not looked at it, but has anyone looked at Donald Trump's chart with Kamala's to see what
Oh, yeah.
the energy is between the two?
I can't remember if I did the composite between them or not yet. I don't think I have. I know I don't have it as a chart.
She just had a progressed full moon eclipse across his nodes. I mean, they've got similar nodes, and her full moon eclipse was a year ago. I want to say 24 Gemini Sag nodes,
Okay.
but
Yeah. Yeah. So what I did, in case anybody's looking, the moon changes signs on election day. It goes from Sag to Capricorn. And so I use the generic 7 p.m. for Washington, even though we have time zone differences. And at that time period, you could see we have a pretty tight moon square to the transiting nodes. And they don't do so much for Kamala's chart, but they do on Donald's. And if you look at the blue here, I mean, this is smack dab on that south node on his Neptune, the north node on his Eris with the moon square. I saw that as being kind of rough for him. The other thing that happens exactly on election day is his solar arc Saturn hanging out right here in Libra is exact square to the minute of his Mercury.
Mm.
And so, you know, here's that split. Here's all this South Node relationship stuff, you know, with, is he the savior, or, you know, is he just like, we cannot do any more day-to-day reality with this gentleman? You know, time to ride into the sunset. And I even saw that moon in Capricorn, you know, squaring his Neptune Eris. I just saw it as enough of the public going, again, we're tired of you, Don. We'll find out.
For Dick Cheney to endorse Kamala Harris is,
That's a big deal.
it's huge.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that a lot of Republicans are quietly tired of him, and maybe some don't want to come out. You think about Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney doesn't have anything to lose, really.
Or win, really.
Yeah. He just, I mean, because he's already done his time, and he can only help whoever he supports. I mean, Donald Trump can't hurt him. He can't harm him in any way. You get the younger politicians who are seeking power, they feel that they're not strong enough in their power to stand up to the establishment.
Exactly. And he is the establishment. He's taken over the establishment.
He has. He has, and I can't believe that, because I mean, as far as politics is concerned, I am so independent. Because I've lived in both Democrat and Republican states, and both have some major issues. At the same time, you know, looking at this, it's, yeah, he's got some major issues there, and it's just too bad that he's working his shadow so much in this lifetime, because if he was working actually for the collective, for the people versus himself, he would be unstoppable.
Right.
Well, you know, I keep saying that his purpose has been, he's a shit disturber. I mean, Uranus conjunct the sun, conjunct the North Node. That's his whole, that's his whole purpose in life.
Oh,
And
right.
he's done it well. And he's, his chart is, really shows that. And
Rather than for the higher, well, maybe it is for the higher good. I mean, because
eventually
honestly,
it is. It
yeah,
is. I mean,
yeah.
it's exposed all of this, stuff that's been, in the works for, decades.
Yeah. Who was it? I forgot who said this, but somebody made a comment a long time ago that maybe he is an avatar who has agreed to actually play the bad guy for the, this person to wake us up. I have no idea, no clue.
Well,
But
I guess that's kind of a different way of saying what I said.
yeah.
Yeah, except for that, he's so self-centered.
Right. Yeah. Except for you're giving him credit for,
Well, maybe the soul.
exactly. Yes.
versus the
Yes,
person.
exactly.
Yeah.
The soul, but
Marie's not talking on an egoic level.
No, I'm talking the soul, and maybe the soul agreed. It soul
Right.
had to agree to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, because the bottom line is we must evolve, and we've got to evolve fast, because like I think it was you saying, Sue, or maybe it was Kim, talking about beings that are in other galaxies and other places that we know they're there, we know they're here, but the masses, if you can't see it, you don't believe it.
Yeah. I think that was Kim-Marie.
Yeah. And we've got to evolve to be able to accept that, a new truth, because, a belief system is only a belief system until you learn something else. And then your belief system shifts.
Very true.
Yes, we can't see the full spectrum of colors, can we, with our eyes?
No,
But
we sure can't.
those colors do exist, and other beings and other animals on Earth can see them.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Wow. It's been good.
It's going to
Stay
be an
tuned.
interesting few months.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. All
Like a
right.
roller coaster ride.
Well, what we do is we just eat popcorn and drink wine.
Hey, what
There's going
time's
to
it
be some
start?
popcorn parties on Tuesday. I've seen them advertised.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You mean
they're gonna
for the
eat popcorn
for
and
the
watch the
debate?
debates.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm actually going to watch this one. I tend to stay away from watching the debates and all that. I always know who I'm going to vote for, and I don't need to listen to any of the other stuff. But this one, I'm doing it for the fun of it. So,
Yeah, we'll see how long I can stay calm.
how long you can say? Well, that's where you have to.
How long I can watch
How
without
long you can watch? Yeah, you have to play. You have to just play the observer in yourself, even watching it.
Exactly. We'll see how long I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually live in a household where we don't exactly have the same viewpoint politically and see things the same way. So it's kind of interesting.
So are you
Oh.
going to watch the debate together?
No. I will watch it by myself.
Ah.
Well, we will have to get back together again as things evolve. Maybe, I don't know, you want to get back together before the election, or shall we wait until after?
I think
Go
ahead, Marie.
I would say after the election, but really close to, say within a week.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to set up some times and see what will work for everyone.
Sounds good. This has been great.
It has. Thank you all for joining us.
Oh,
Mm.
you are welcome. This is always fun.
Yeah,
That it
thank you
is.
for your behind the scenes work.
Yes.
My pleasure. Okie doke, ladies.
All right.
See ya next time.
Okay, until
See you
next
next
time.
time. Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.